Hey there, Mr. Witherow here. Today we're going to talk about the key features of functions. And you can see that I've got them listed here. X-intercepts, Y-intercept, the domain, the range, and sometimes they're going to ask for like the rate of change, which is also known as slope, right? For an interval between -2 and 0, all right? So for a portion of the graph. That's what they're looking for here. So let's go through here and let's talk about what some of these things mean, right? So first and foremost, let's look at the graph. You can see that we have a parabola here. A U-shaped graph is called a parabola. We have arrows here indicating that this will go on forever. And we have to remember two things, that graphs can go left and right, they can expand, and then they can go bottom to top. That's what these arrows are. Now, obviously, we can't draw every graph to scale and to the affinities, because then we don't have that. That's what the arrows mean. The arrows mean that this is working its way to affinity. And in the case of the x's, it's actually working towards negative affinity. For the y's, it's working towards positive affinity. And that's how we have to sort of kind of think about things, is in terms of x's and y's, not necessarily the actual shape of the graph. All right, so don't fall in love with the shape of the graph. What you have to start looking at graphs are how are the x's affected by the graph, and how are the y's affected by the graph. Think about that. All right. Okay. So x-intercepts, these are common, right? Sometimes we have one, sometimes we have multiple, and sometimes we have none, right? So x-intercepts are basically where does it cross the x-axis. So if we look here and we look here, it is crossing the x-axis at, what would be, that would be 5, and that would be -5. So you can write -5 and 5, but really what you should probably write is the point -5, 0 and 5, 0. Those are the points. The y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So again, we're looking at it right here. Now be careful of the scale here. It looks like they go by 10, so this is -30 here, so that looks like it's -25. So again, you may want to write it in coordinate points, 0, -25. All right, so those are basic. I mean, we should be able to look at the graph and see where it crosses the x's and see where it crosses the y-axis. Now we're going to step up our game a little bit more, and we're going to talk about the domain and the range. The domain and range, remember the domain are the x values. The range is the y values. And this is going to be in a span, right? So you have to think of it as a span. It's not just going to be a single number like this up here. This could be a span. Now I like to use the word range, but I don't want to do that because that would be confusing. But the domain is, okay, let's talk about the x, it's the x values. Now notice that I'm on the x axis. I don't care about what the shape is. I'm not looking at where it crosses, because that's what the x-intercepts are. I'm looking at what values of x does this line, or does this graph include, all right? So like I said earlier, these have arrows. So this graph is working its way to negative affinity. And it's working its way this way to positive affinity. So what type of numbers for the x values are from negative affinity all the way to positive affinity? Because I could be way out here and look up, and this graph is going to be there. There's going to be some point out there, because this is moving towards negative affinity, and this is moving towards positive affinity. So that means that all of these numbers of x's can be used. So for the domain, we would say all real numbers. because every number imaginable will be used. Not saying that doesn't, we can't say that for range. The range, right? The range has a floor and a ceiling, right? Domain is left to right. So you have to think of that, left to right. The range is bottom to top. That's how you have to think of it. So the range is where is the bottom, right? Again, don't worry about the shape. We're looking at the y values here. And we can see that the y values stop at this negative 25. All right? Now, your y-intercept isn't always going to be the floor. I want you to understand that. So where does this stop? It stops right here at negative 25. Now, what type of numbers can y be? Well, this arrows are telling us that it's going to positive infinity. So we want all the numbers greater than negative 25. So we would tell ourselves that y is greater than or equal to negative 25. That's the range. The range are the y values, and the y values are from negative 25 all the way up to positive infinity. That's the reason why it's this. And the last thing is, they want to know what the slope or the rate of change is over the interval of negative 2 to 0. So we have to go and find out what that is. So here's negative 2. I'm going to switch to a pencil. You can see this here. So here's negative 2, and here's 0. So they want, and I'm going to zoom in on here, they want to know what the rate of change is right here, that part of the graph. All right? So that part of the graph. So let's take a, remember that the rate of change is the change in y, right? So the change in y over the change in x. The change in y over the change in x. So what is the y? All right. Well, the y looks like it's at negative 20. So we're going to say negative 20 minus, and then at 0, we're at negative 25 over, and then the change in x is from negative 2 to 0, right? So make sure that you're constant. So it's this point to this point. This point is negative 2, negative 20. This point is 0, negative 25. All right, so here we go. So now we say minus a negative is adding. So 25 minus 20 is, not 20, is 5 over negative 2 minus, so negative 2. So this is, let me rewrite that so you can see. So the rate of change is 5 over negative 2. Oh, there you go, 5 over negative 2. That would be the rate of change. So again, recap here. You've got x-intercepts, where does it cross the x-axis? Y-intercepts, where does it cross the y-intercept or axis? Domain are the x values, so which x values are in play? The range are the y values, again, which ones are in play, and then the slope. Let's try another one. All right, so here's the other one. So the x-intercepts. So where does this cross the x-axis? Well, it doesn't, so there are none. Y-intercept. Here's the y-axis. It crosses right here. That looks to me like 7, right? So 7, but or 0, 7, right? That's the point, 0, 7. All right, so this is where, again, it gets a little, where we have to look at the shape of the graph, or ignore the shape of the graph and look at what numbers are in play. Remember that we're looking for x's, right? What x's are in play? That's what you want to know. What x's? That's what we're looking for. All right, so here's the arrow, right? We look at these arrows. This arrow says this thing is working its way to negative infinity, right? This arrow says it's working its way to positive infinity. So again, what x's are in play? Well, all of them are in play, because this is going to negative infinity, and this is going to positive, so this is all real numbers. And then the range is the y. So again, domain is left to right, range is bottom to top. So again, where's the bottom at? The bottom, and this is what I would draw the line over here. So what number is this for y? That looks like 3. So that's the bottom is 3. How far up does it go? Well, these arrows are telling us that it's going to go up forever, and that's positive infinity. So we want all the numbers greater than 3. So y is going to be greater than or equal to 3. All right? And then the last thing is that we want this rate of change over that same -2 to 0. So we got to look down here. -2 is the second one, so it's going to be from here all the way to 0, all the way to this one. All right? So that's a positive slope, so we know that. So the rate of change is, again, the y over the x, the change in y. Well, y was at 3 minus, now it goes all the way up to 7, over, and then the x is at -2 to 0. So 3 minus 7 is -4. -2 minus 0 is -2. -4 divided by -2 is a +2. So the slope is 2 over 1 or 2. That's the rate of change. All right? So key features. Take the notes. Go back and listen to this. All right? All right, keep having fun.